When you think of ancient North Africa, what comes to mind? Mighty Carthage? The legions of Rome? For centuries, that's the story we've been told, one written by conquerors. But what if the real power, the force that shaped the destiny of Carthage itself, wasn't an invading empire, but the ancient and powerful Berber kingdoms that have been almost completely written out of the history books? This is the untold story of North Africa's original kings, who weren't just conquered subjects, but shrewd power brokers who played empires against each other. Long before Carthage or Rome, the huge stretch of North Africa from the Atlantic coast to the Nile's western valley belonged to a diverse and ancient people. The Greeks and Romans had many names for them: Libyans, Numidians, Mori, but they called themselves the Imazighen, which means free people or free men. Today we know them as the Berbers. Their roots run deep, stretching all the way back to Stone Age tribes whose art is still painted on the rock walls of the Tassili Niger Plateau. For thousands of years, these communities thrived in a land of dramatic contrasts, from the green Mediterranean coast to the blistering sands of the Sahara. They weren't one giant empire, but a collection of tribes and clans, each with its own leader and traditions. They were expert farmers, nomads, and seriously tough warriors. Way before outsiders showed up, they even developed a unique writing system, the Tifana. While its exact origins are debated by scholars, it stands as a testament to a complex, homegrown culture. First mentioned in ancient Egyptian records, Berber-speaking peoples spread across the Maghreb starting around 2000 BCE, setting the stage for the kingdoms that would one day challenge the great powers of the Mediterranean. This was a land already bursting with history, culture, and a fierce, independent spirit, a spirit that was about to be put to the test. Around the 12th century BCE, the Bronze Age world was falling apart. But for a group of expert sailors and merchants from the Levant, what is now Lebanon and Syria, it was a golden opportunity. We call them the Phoenicians. Their cedar wood ships were the best in the world, and they sailed them west, hunting for new markets and precious metals. By the 9th century BCE, they had set up small trading posts along the North African coast. These weren't built for conquest, but as strategic pit stops to trade with the local Imazighen. The most famous of these findings is wrapped in a fantastic legend, the story of Queen Dido. Running from her murderous brother in the city of Tyre, Dido landed on the coast of modern-day Tunisia. She made a deal with a local Berber chieftain for a small piece of land, only as much as a single ox hide could cover. And here's the clever part. She sliced the hide into a single paper-thin strip, long enough to encircle a whole hill. On that hill, she founded her new home, Carthage, or the new city. We know it as Carthage. While the story is probably a myth, it holds a core truth. The founding of Carthage around 814 BCE wasn't just a conquest, but an act of negotiation with the people who were already there. This new city was destined for greatness, but its fate would be forever linked to the free men who called North Africa home. In its early days, Carthage and its Berber neighbors had a relationship built on mutual need. Carthage was the gateway to the Mediterranean, but the Berbers controlled the valuable trade routes that led into the heart of Africa. They brought gold, grain, and metals from the interior to trade for Phoenician wine, oil, and technology. Carthage's power was mostly stuck to the coast. Inland, the Berber tribes were still their own bosses. It wasn't so much a ruler-subject relationship as it was a very lopsided partnership. Over the centuries, this closeness created a unique, blended Punic culture. Phoenician settlers and local Berbers intermarried, creating a Libo-Phoenician society that pulled from both worlds. In fact, some genetic studies on ancient Carthaginian sites suggest that a significant part of the city's population had local North African Imazighen ancestry, showing it was more of a melting pot than a pure colonial outpost. The Berbers weren't just on the sidelines. They were a core part of Carthaginian society. They were workers and, most importantly, soldiers in Carthage's army, but it was a tense alliance. Carthage demanded heavy taxes, sometimes up to half a tribe's harvest, which sparked frequent bloody revolts. It was a partnership held together by convenience, but just beneath the surface, the struggle for power was always ready to explode. History, as it's often told, paints the Berbers as scattered tribes or simple mercenaries. That's just flat out wrong. As Carthage's power grew, so did the political ambition of the Imazighen. They started banding together, forming powerful kingdoms that didn't just resist Carthage, but sometimes even made the great city pay them for protection. The two biggest were Mauritania in the west, and most importantly, Numidia, in what is now Algeria and Tunisia. And it was from Numidia that one of the most brilliant political operators of the ancient world would emerge, King Masinissa. Born around 238 BCE, Masinissa was the son of a chief of the Massiliae, a major Numidian tribe. He was actually educated in Carthage and started his career fighting for them. But Masinissa had a bigger dream, a strong, unified Numidian kingdom. The power of these Berber kingdoms was in their cavalry. Numidian horsemen were legendary. Riding their tough local horses without saddles or bridles, they were masters of the hit and run, moving with incredible speed and stealth. Carthaginian generals came to depend on this cavalry, which was a famously critical part of their army. But these weren't just soldiers for hire. They were the armies of organized kingdoms, led by ambitious kings who were about to change the game. The real turning point for North Africa came during the epic throwdown between Rome and Carthage, the Punic Wars. And the Berber kingdoms weren't just watching from the cheap seats. They were the kingmakers. Their shifting loyalties would decide who won. At the start of the Second Punic War, most Numidians, under kings like Sephax, were allied with Carthage. Masinissa himself was leading Numidian cavalry for Carthage in Spain, and he was instrumental in their early victories. But Carthage had a bad habit of treating its allies like employees. Feeling betrayed by Carthaginian politics and seeing the tide of war turning, Masinissa made a game-changing decision. He switched sides and allied with Rome. The Roman general Scipio Africanus was no fool. He knew exactly how valuable his new ally was. When Scipio finally invaded Africa in 204 BCE, Masinissa and his forces were right there with him. This new alliance came to a head at the legendary Battle of Zama in 202 BCE, while Hannibal's elephants and infantry were busy fighting the Roman legions. It was Masinissa's cavalry that delivered the knockout blow. His horsemen smashed Hannibal's flanks, surrounded the Carthaginian army, and sealed a decisive Roman victory. As a reward, Rome named Masinissa the king of a newly unified Numidia, a massive kingdom that now completely surrounded what was left of Carthage. The Berber king had outplayed his old bosses. Carthage was now caught between an angry Rome and the powerful, ambitious Numidian kingdom at its back door. With Rome's blessing, Masinissa ruled for nearly 50 years, transforming Numidia from a collection of tribes into a strong, unified, and prosperous state. He modernized agriculture and built a nation. His ultimate goal was to forge a great North African empire, and he constantly picked fights by encroaching on Carthaginian land. Carthage, bound by its treaty with Rome, couldn't do much to stop him. It was these provocations that gave Rome the excuse it needed to launch the third and final Punic War. In 146 BCE, Rome completely leveled the city of Carthage, wiping its old rival off the map for good. With Carthage gone, the story changed. Roman historians wrote the version of events that got passed down, framing it as a simple rivalry between two giants. The decisive role of the Berber kingdoms was downplayed, and kings like Masinissa were cast as supporting characters in Rome's epic. Eventually, Numidia itself was swallowed by the Roman Empire. But the legacy of the Imazighen never died. Through Roman, Vandal, Byzantine, and later Arab rule, Berber culture and language survived, especially in the rugged mountains. The story of ancient North Africa isn't just about foreign empires. It's the story of an indigenous people who traded with, fought, married, and ultimately outmaneuvered the Phoenician kings of Carthage. They were a force that shaped their own destiny, and their legacy is a powerful reminder that history is always more complicated than the stories told by the winners. If you found this slice of forgotten history as fascinating as we did, do us a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that challenge the official record, and tell us in the comments what part of this story shocked you the most. Your support helps us keep digging. The relationship between the Berbers and the Phoenicians was never simple. It was a complex dance of rivalry, alliance, and cultural fusion that defined North Africa for centuries. The Berbers weren't a footnote in the story of Carthage. They were a central chapter. They were soldiers, traders, and kings who built powerful nations and played a decisive role in the greatest conflicts of their age. By bringing the story of kingdoms like Numidia and kings like Masinissa back into focus, we get a much richer and more accurate picture of the ancient world. It's a world where power wasn't just found in the grand coastal empires, but also in the resilient, unconquerable spirit of the free people of North Africa.